This week, we've seen Pakistan's Prime Minister dissolve his government and the National Assembly with an interim one taking over. Elections were meant to take place in November, but it's been announced the vote will only happen after a new census and fresh constituency boundaries are drawn up. The opposition, led by former PM Imran Khan, claims the government's stalling those. The former cricketer's popularity grows. However, Mr Khan was arrested earlier this month after a court sentenced him to a 3-year prison term for corrupt practices while disqualifying him from politics. He has appealed, though, his conviction, and his lawyer says the Islamabad High Court will hear that appeal today. Joining me now is Zulfikar Bukhari, a former cabinet member and chairman's advisor. Mr Bukhari, good morning.
Morning.
Good to have you with us. Pakistan then clearly going through yet more turbulent political times. So just take us through, certainly for the benefit of our listeners who may not know, just how significant is this latest dissolving of government by the current PM, and who is in charge now, and to what extent?
Well, we don't know who the caretaker prime minister is going to be, but it's illegal, really, and unconstitutional. It's clearly written in the constitution that any caretaker setup cannot last more than 90 days. So we're hoping, and it's a thin hope, that elections don't get delayed further. But from what their intentions look like, and with Imran Khan's popularity, I don't see them holding elections in the next 90 days because they know Imran Khan, disqualified or not disqualified or prisoned or not prisoned, he's still the biggest force in the country.
Is then much of what's happening now the result of him being arrested and incarcerated?
Yes, absolutely. I just want to make it clear to the listeners that the day he got convicted by a lower session court, his lawyers were not allowed to give any arguments. It was the most bizarre case ever. They heard one side, and then they never heard defense, and they were not allowed to speak. In fact, one of the most senior lawyers in Pakistan, who is part of Imran Khan's legal team, his clerk was abducted on the way to court. And the ones that didn't make it to court were just silenced and just said, no, we're not listening to your arguments. And then he was convicted. And within half an hour, a 35-page report or decision was typed out. And within that half an hour, his house in Lahore, although the hearing was in Islamabad, was broken into. So it was obviously all predetermined, the whole entire scenario.
Give us a sense then about the level of support he continues to have amongst lots of groups, obviously amongst his own supporters, but the wider community in Pakistan, politics and politicians on all sides, even the media. And what are the realistic hopes, do you think, of him winning his court appeal later?
Well, I think the best example for his popularity is that the very next day after his arrest, there was a mayor election in one of the provinces, KP, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan, the very next day. And his party swept both the elections of mayors in both districts, and not just by a small margin, by a big margin. So that shows you the popularity. I think what the last 12 months has done is that even people sitting on the fence, or those who had grievances with Imran Khan's policies, they all have rallied up with him, just saying that the man deserved his 5 years and he doesn't deserve this and this. Everyone can see the conspiracy, within the country that was cooked up against him. So his support is massive. We have a population of around 65% under the age of 40, and they're all, I wouldn't even say for Imran Khan, they're all completely besotted and in love with Imran Khan. So he clearly has emerged as the most popular leader the country has ever seen. As for what's going to happen next with his disqualification, we're hopeful in the judicial system in the higher courts. It's always the lower courts that's easily manipulated, but we've got faith in the high court, if not in the Supreme Court. We know that this case is frivolous. He'll get thrown out. His sentence will be reversed. His jail time will be finished. The whole case will be thrown out. But what they are going to do, I think, and I'll say it, quite clearly on your show, is that he has more than 200 cases against him. A man who had no case ever against him his entire life has, in the last 12 months, had 200 cases from terrorism to stealing a ballpoint pen. against him. So they will just keep him busy from courtroom to courtroom, and then put him in jail for 3 days. He gets bail, he wins the case again, then he goes to court again, then he goes to jail again. They want to keep him busy for the next 6 months while they run this sort of sham of a caretaker government.
Just finally then, what are your worst fears for what happens to him if he remains, though, in jail and more cases are built against him? And also, what's his morale like just now? Is anybody you know actually speaking with him?
Yes, for 2.5 days, they didn't give access to anybody. Then finally, they gave it to one person of his legal team. They still haven't given family members or anyone else any access. The court, even though the decision was a very controversial decision, the court had still given a decision to send him to a particular jail called Adiala Jail. They completely bypassed that and took him to another prison called Attock Prison, which is an old colonial prison. It doesn't have any of the facilities of the other jail. They've kept him in a Category C prison. He's entitled, as a former prime minister and a former parliamentarian, as Category A. So they've kept him in Category C, which is basically a death row prison where terrorists are kept. It's a 6x8 cell. It's you don't know when it's day, you don't know when it's night. It's effectively solitary confinement. We're extremely worried, as you know, as his friend also. My biggest concern right now is his health, his safety. We know he's not being given food properly. When he met his lawyer for 1 hour or 40 minutes, they had a chat. His morale was very high. He laughed. He said, "They're trying to break me, and they're keeping me how you would keep not even an animal," was his exact words. And he just laughed and he goes, "They're trying to break me, but I guess I can't expect anything else from them." Those are his exact words, quote unquote.
Goodness, what a stressful time for you all, certainly, as you say, him himself. Imran Khan. Zulfikar Bukhari, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks very much indeed for joining us live here on LBC News Breakfast.